Hey everybody, this is awesome. We're live. Hey, I am Brian Altounian, co-host and co-founder of Just Two Dads, here with my partner, my co-host, Mr. Shawn Francis. We started our Just Two Dads podcast about 2.5 years ago as a conversation just between, well, just two dads, frankly. Yeah. Dads of kids who were kiddos who were dealing with special needs issues. Shawn's son on the autism spectrum, my daughter born with some dealing with some learning disabilities her entire life. And we were having conversations. We were actually interviewed on a podcast, and that podcast never aired. And so Shawn and I looked at each other and we're like, why aren't we just doing this conversation? Because we kept encountering really great people in the world of financial services, the business that we're in, which we'll talk about a little bit tonight. And we thought, we met some just great warriors who were doing great things for our community. We thought, man, if we only had a platform, a place where we could actually identify, highlight, spotlight those folks and share with the rest of our community around the country, actually around the world, the kinds of great things that people were doing for the community. And that was 2.5 years ago. Today we recorded episode number 129, so we have 129 episodes into Just Two Dads. So you can catch us on our Facebook channel or on YouTube, Just Two Dads on YouTube, podcast outlets everywhere. And so tonight, this is an unusual opportunity for us. Well, I guess it's not really that unusual because we go live all the time.
We do. It's what's unusual, what's wonderfully unusual about it is the amount of people that are taking part in this endeavor through Autism Live, and I just think it's just so fantastic.
Amazing.
The people that I've told about it personally,
Yeah.
the response is just like, that's such a fantastic idea, and it is, and to be able to be a part of something like that, like there's a certain part of me when I think of this moment, like right here, dialing back to the very inception of of our show, it's kind of like, part of me doesn't know how we got here,
right?
You know, and we contact people and exchange and have conversations about being on their show and them on ours as well. Yeah. And we just felt that we don't think, at least I don't have a lot of male friends that I have the type of conversations with that Brian and I exchange. And then we began to feel that those conversations don't take place that much with men, period. Right. Because society doesn't exactly encourage us to embrace our fears as much as we will our hopes and express emotion. And vulnerability is usually seen as a weakness as opposed to a strength. And so we began having these conversations on Facebook. We just said, well, why don't we do like a Facebook Live? We didn't even say, we'd like to say that we decided we should do a podcast of our own, but no, we just said we should do a Facebook Live. And the first couple ones were like, is this thing on? I think it's on. I think it's on.
They were terrible.
Kept all of those up, and we've gone from that to now being on, most any and every platform that you get podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel and AM radio in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where I'm originally from. And so here we are.
We get a podcast in Burbank, where I'm originally from. So, it's always, anyways. So thanks. So we have the iPad. So if people are letting comments, any comments there. So hi Marina, how you doing? So tonight we're going to talk about a couple of things. The subject that Shawn just brought up is important. And before I get there, I'm sorry. April is Autism Awareness Month, and so we're honored to be here, a part of this conversation. And again, some of the folks that have had their that have presented so far and across these 4 to 4 hours, some of those folks have been on our podcast, and some of those folks we've been on their podcast, and so it's a community that continues to get tighter and tighter, and just we're so proud to be a part of this conversation.
Most so definitely.
Yeah, so this is good. So we're glad to be here. One of the things that we wanted to talk about is what I started to mention, what Shawn had mentioned, which is the fact that men, fathers of special need, male caregivers and fathers of special needs children, often I don't want to say we're left out of the conversation, but we have a different way that we approach things such as the diagnosis, how we deal with the issues.
Well, I think we're left out of the conversation by some, but by the same token, I think we do a fairly good job of leaving ourselves out of the conversation as well.
For sure.
Because, again, men are forced, not forced to, but left to wear a lot of masks rather than being themselves, because you're supposed to provide and maybe not ask too many questions, and you're supposed to have all the answers. And
if you show vulnerability, it's a sign of a weakness in some cultures and some areas. Which we don't believe, by the way. Shawn and I cry at everything. We
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's age or what it is, but we've come to the point where we'll cry drop of a hat. I'm kind of crying. Traven's here having to keep the technical stuff rolling here today. But we're sensitive to the conversation, but we're also engaged, and we are we're active in communicating those things that tie us together. And
absolutely.
Right. And in this world where things can be divisive and conversations can be, whether you're talking politics or banking, government, finance, there's so many things where you can have a divisive conversation that when it comes to things such as our family and taking care of our children and taking care of our loved ones, that conversation shouldn't be about divisiveness. It shouldn't be about the things that separate us, and and I hate to use the word should, but it should be about the things that unite us.
Yeah.
Right.
And to begin with, in our financial services firm, we were part of a men's group, which was a fantastic opportunity. Learned so much from it. And to begin with, when it was first explained to me that there was an opportunity to be part of a men's group, to be honest with you, I just thought, well, when I hear men's group, I love my sports. I don't really drink. Yeah. I'm not a handy guy or whatever have you, but I'm a guy. But when I think of a men's group, I think of guys sitting around a campfire having a beard going contest to see who can actually push one out the furthest. And, oh, my beard is more grizzly than yours, and I caught and killed my lunch today. And that's what I envisioned. But when I thought of the opportunity to grow, take responsibility for your emotions and things like that, and connect with other men that may not be as open to that but need it, I thought, well, why don't we do that? And we did that. It was a fairly large group across the country, and then we had smaller subgroups, and I ran one of those groups, got so much out of it, and then I started, saying to Brian, I was like, I think we should do something like this for not just special needs dads, because I think you also have to redefine special needs, because like we always say, if you're blessed with a long life, you're going to be a member of the special needs community by way of your own age, or taking care of someone, or an injury. It's inevitable. And for anyone that's caring for a parent, they're a member of the special needs community. I invited a gentleman to the group today, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But what happened is we decided, we should, why don't we start a group, of our own? And we wanted to make sure that we were getting a good exchange of energy in terms of our time, because, life is short. Time is at a premium, and so you want to make sure that people are engaged. I realized I was doing what I often do, is master the art of complication, which is, let's just launch the group. We'll open registration, get as many people to take part as we possibly can, and make sure that they know that this is a place not only for them to feel safe and secure and be able to express themselves, but that we're looking for them to participate, not just simply attend. And so that group that we've created is known as The Den, and it is going to launch on April 23rd, that Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific. We're going to meet once a month and have a conversation via Zoom about a variety of different topics.
Yeah. And what we found was that we would have conversations, and we would hear from women. They said, oh, it's amazing and unusual that men would be talking about these kinds of issues, or would have these sort of sensitivities or sensibilities. And it got to the point where we were hearing it so often. We're like, well, it's partially because men don't feel safe in an environment to express that vulnerability. And yet then we've met some phenomenal dads and phenomenal folks along the way, men that have, that do bare their soul. Our Autism Dad, and guys like Matt Failer and Dan Habib, and we have so many great men that have dropped their guard and been vulnerable and shared their experience. And I think that that's the thing that makes us human, right? It makes us human.
Absolutely.
It makes us realize that we're all sharing this experience together. While we may not have the exact same diagnosis, and our children may not have the same issues, what we go through as men is very, very similar. And have a place where we can say, I'm afraid, or I'm scared, or I don't know what this looks like, and I don't know where to turn to, and I don't know who to talk to, and I just want to be heard. We talk about it all the time. We want to be seen. We want to be gotten. We want people to get us. We thought this is important for us to have this. So, we call it the den because in the house, the den is the most comfortable place. Sit back, maybe the TV's on, you have a beer. So we call this group the den. And I'm sure it's going to evolve over time, but it's really a place for us to, come together with other male caregivers. And again, we have a whole list of topics, but then we're going to open it up. We want everybody to be able to engage. And we have a format that we're going to follow that we like, that I think is going to make it safe. Some people can just dial in on the Zoom and listen, not participate. Obviously, the more engagement, the better. But
right.
But some people will be raising their hand and want to contribute a lot, and we'll manage and monitor all that. We want everybody to feel like they're in a safe place, and it's a good place to come for an hour a month. We may increase the frequency. We may change the date, whatever. We're open to that experience, whatever works best for our audience.
Yeah, we just want to get it started. And just like I had, admittedly, a narrow view of what a men's group is, and I thought it had to be this thing where, you're trying to determine who's the most grisly. When we talk about vulnerability, that doesn't mean that you need to be prepared to just come and shed 5 pounds of water through tears and just cry your eyes out, or else you're not a member. That's not the point. The point is to just be able to raise your hand when you go, you know what? I'm unsure of X, Y, or Z, or I'm afraid of such and such. And for some of us, depending on, if anybody that is familiar with the book, The 5 Love Languages, whether the topic is love or money, the way you view almost anything, whenever anyone is on our show, we have them speak about what we call the origin, them being a hero, how they got their superpowers as a special needs warrior. And the way that we do anything is based so much upon the environment that we grew up in. And so if you were raised in a home where your father or father figure didn't openly express any kind of emotion, depending on how much of that you've absorbed, you might not even be good at knowing what it is that you fear or that you have a fear, because the mask is that thick and that tight.
Yeah, I remember in my household, my father's from the Middle East, and so I wasn't, I wasn't allowed to actually show any vulnerability. I wasn't allowed to cry. I wasn't allowed to show weakness. I wasn't allowed to be sick. I wasn't allowed to, do any of that stuff without, being shamed or, made fun of. And that, that stuck with me because, as we go through life, it's an emotional experience. We're spiritual beings occupying this physical body, and, we're going to go through stuff, and we're going to experience those emotions raw and real, and to have to be pushing it down because some, old culture, cultural mores dictate that that's what we do. What it does is it shortcuts the opportunity to engage with the community and be part of something.
Right.
Because if and by the way, now in a post-pandemic world, we're talking about mental health on a regular basis and how that's a real thing. And for our children who, went through that pandemic and lost 1.5 years or 2 years of their school socialization, mental health is a conversation that it's overdue.
And that's the other thing too. When you, it's just like what we talk about is that when it comes to any community that is either marginalized or not encouraged to speak up, so to speak, whatever it is that matters to everyone in general matters to that community twice as much.
For sure.
So it is 10 times more important for a special needs parent or one that's diagnosed to be seen, heard, got, understood, or think that someone is at least trying to understand them. Yep. It's 10 times important in our community to make sure that there is financial literacy, which we'll talk about. But then, by the same token, men, quote unquote, run the country, but men don't, aren't encouraged to openly, again, share emotions or concerns or whatever the case may be. So then there's a disservice that takes place in terms of being able to, first of all, adequately define, well, what does it mean to be a man anyway? Right. That's one of the very first things that you could talk about.
Yeah.
And I think that too often, unfortunately, what it means is, for lack of a better term, being fake, kind of, so to speak, because you're not, you can't acknowledge any fear. And then sometimes, again, even what that means. What does it mean to be afraid? That doesn't have to mean cowering in a corner. That means acknowledging what you're afraid of and then facing it. And it's easier to do that if you know that you're in a room where other people might, feel the same way, and you can be encouraged to do that. And anything we do that betters a community or a subset of the community eventually betters the world at large.
For sure. For sure. It's so funny. We ridicule our leaders and the people that we hold, in high esteem, celebrities and whatnot, if they express an emotion that's human. The fact that we made that there was a meme, the collective we, that there was a meme about Michael Jordan crying. I mean, he's a human being, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
You see the champions and the warriors who are out there, fighting the fight, and they'll get up there. And we have a favorite mentor, a gentleman named Ed Milet. And Ed's a man's man, and he's very in your face. But the thing that makes Ed so relatable from my perspective is that Ed's incredibly vulnerable. Ed talks about his family. He talks about his mother. He talks about, there, but for the grace of God, go I. Like the struggles that he had with his father, who was an alcoholic. He wrote an entire book about it, and that that the vulnerability that he shares that goes hand in hand and side by side with his drive and his desire to succeed and make, and support other entrepreneurs and make successful business folks out of the people in his circle. That's what means a lot to me personally. I find his vulnerability along with his strength makes him human and actually makes him more relatable. Because I'm not. We've had a joke in my family that I'm only 5'9.5", and then I get argued that the half is something that I've added. But I'm never going to be an NBA basketball player. I was never going to be an NBA basketball player. I'm 5'9". I'm very slow. I can't dribble with my left hand. There's a whole bunch of reasons why I'm never going to be an NBA basketball player. So, but I can relate to the championship mentality. But I'm never going to be that, right? And so I'm not going to be a Kobe Bryant. I could try to apply the Mamba mentality to the work that I do to try to gain that some perspective and some advantage. But I'm never going to be that person. And so in some ways it feels like it's almost not relatable to some degree. Like it's untouchable. It's something that will never be part of my world. Again, the mentality I can embrace. But when I see leaders who share their vulnerability and share their humanity, to me that's what makes it. Then I go, oh, I can relate to that. That makes a lot more sense to me, and I can be that person because that person's not afraid to expose who he is as a human being, and again shares humanity. So we're rambling on this topic. Well, that's what the conversation around the den is going to be all about, right? We're going to talk about anything else
that anybody is kind of struggling with. And it's funny. I just had a thought, as you were talking there. Far be it from me to make any excuse. I don't know what the statistics are, but I know the optics. When it comes to single parents of those with special needs, I would think that there are probably more single moms than they are single dads. I don't exactly know. I'd be interested in knowing that, especially if somebody has a statistic.
Yeah.
I know a couple dads that are single and their quote unquote better half, so to speak, left, or they split up and they have full custody. But what I got to thinking of is, as long as we've been encouraged as a society to be reserved and not express ourselves, I wonder how many, and not to make any excuses for the men that may have left, but I wonder how many men, how many dads might still, or might be the type of person that wouldn't run from a challenge like that had they been raised in an environment where they were encouraged to be themselves, period.
Yeah, interesting.
Whatever that might be, whether you're talking about a vocation, interest, anything at all. Not just, because we're not talking about just don't be afraid to share your fear, but don't be afraid to be yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think that's kind of what everything comes down to, because I think both men and women, as a society as a whole, we're kind of not encouraged to be ourselves.
Yeah.
And you can't be the best version of yourself if you're not even true about who you are to begin with.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we also know business leaders who have children with special needs issues who don't acknowledge them publicly, who don't acknowledge the
existence
within the family publicly, which is interesting because they.
And it's an observation, not a judgment either.
Absolutely not. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And in fact, we've had some on our podcast, and they have actually said to us, we've never really talked about this publicly, and I don't know why I haven't, but it's sort of ingrained. Men feel, and again, this is a total generalization, but a lot of men feel like, look, my job is to provide, to make sure that my family has all of the resources they need to be able to succeed and do everything they can. So if I just focus on my work or my income stream or the ways that I can provide, that's my job. And then the raising of the children and the dealing with all that, put that on mom. By the way, I think that happens in neurotypical families as well. Mm-hmm. Again, being a total generalization. But it is interesting to see that how certain business leaders don't acknowledge. And again, I think for us, our goal is to try to create an environment where these kinds of things are talked about. By the way, there's a lot of topics to be discussed that are kind of interesting. Things like, if a family is broken up, do I date again as a parent of a special needs child?
That's on our agenda too.
How do I deal with my child who's now of the dating age, and how do I deal with that as a parent?
How do you love equally but differently because of the needs of one that has a diagnosis? How do you make sure that your neurotypical child is not left out of the equation or the conversation?
Right.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of topics we're going to be discussing on in our group, The Den. These are some of the topics that we cover on our Just Two Dads podcast on a weekly basis as well. Sometimes we get great guests that are engaged in that conversation. Sometimes they're just guests that are doing amazing things for the community. So, so we're looking forward to doing that. We wanted to share tonight that for if you are a caregiver, and again, you don't have to be a dad, male caregiver. Maybe you're taking care of an older family member, or you're just a caregiver in that space, and you just want to have a place to have a safe conversation. Join us. Or if you know somebody who fits that description, have them join us, in the Den. Again, there's no fee to join the group. We have an Eventbrite link for our first episode. We do it all on Zoom, and so again, nobody has to travel anywhere. We can do it. Doesn't matter what part of the world that you're in. We want people to come in and by the way, we may have 4 people, and that's okay, because sometimes you have to
start someplace. Yeah, and you may be like one of the gentlemen that's joined that is a former guest on our show, is not a parent, but he's a teacher. He's a special education teacher, and so for 5 to 8 hours a day, or a little less than 8 hours a day, he is a special needs caregiver. So we're not that restrictive in terms of who we're looking to connect with, or more than anything, give a place where you can feel free to connect.
You wore black today so you could be skinny. You could look skinny on camera. You did that on purpose.
This is actually blue. This isn't.
Well, it looks dark to me. It looks black to me. And I'm realizing not that I have an issue about my weight, but I'm just saying my blue shirt makes me. And the camera adds 20 pounds, so we're just going to go.
I don't think any of that's true. I think you look great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll pay you later. I appreciate that. It's real life. We're just,
just having conversation.
Stuff that comes in our head. Yeah. So up on the screen is the Den. There's a place for you to join, get your name and your information, and tickets are free. So join the Den, and I hope again encourage people to come and see what it's all about. So
yeah, and once you do that and you're registered, the link will be sent out as we get closer to that date. And we're really looking for the participation and the opportunity to exchange energy, and just the way you make the world a better place is by first making the world right around you as good as you possibly can.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Sean could have played basketball, by the way. He's much taller and better looking than me, and can dribble with both hands, from what I understand. Should we talk about, since we're on the subject, should we talk about financial literacy a little bit?
Yeah, I think the best way to start it is,
that's everybody's favorite topic, by the way. Is what is it, 8:30 at night?
Yeah, right.
So like, woohoo! Let's talk about finances. Yay!
The thing is, it is as necessary as it is difficult to talk about, and and so like I said, Anything else, anything that is important to the general community, right, is 10 times as important to us in the special needs community.
For sure.
Being seen, being heard, and then financial literacy as well. And depending upon the severity of your loved one's diagnosis, your thought process, and it may be so automatic that's not even a thought, you may be thinking, you know what, I'm trying to get through today. I can't think about tomorrow, so I can't wrap my head around that. And, you know, we even went, even though it's our profession primarily, we thought, well, do we want to have that, you know, that conversation? But I think it's not a matter of whether or not we want to. I think it's important. And we'll get into exactly why. But the areas that we're looking at are things like income protection, which is the right type and amount of life insurance. Short and long-term savings, having money someplace where it can outpace inflation. If it's done right, you can minimize what you have to give up in taxes as well. Debt elimination, whether you're talking about credit cards, student loans, or tax debt. And then the next thing is then estate planning, having a will or a trust or a special needs trust, whatever the case might be. And so the way that the industry works to begin with is that it usually charges a hefty fee to sit down with anyone. And in addition to that, what they will usually do is work in what you call a captive environment. In other words, if you walked into your favorite neighborhood bank, I'm not going to mention any names because this example is more about the banking system, but not a specific bank. If you walk in there and they offer you products to help you get from point A to point B, financially speaking, what company's products are they probably going to offer? Well, whatever bank it is that you go into. That's what you call a captive environment. And then on top of that, there usually is a quota that has to be met, and then there's a minimum. In some cases, it might be as low as 100,000, some 250, some as much as $1 million. And what that means is you have to have that amount liquid sitting around. And the thing is, if you don't have a plan for your money, regardless of how much or how little you may have, who do you think does have a plan for it? Obviously, the government. And so what we like to do is just help people, you know, build a bridge between the life they have and the one that they want. And so I think a good place to start, Brian, is like some of the, I wouldn't say tenets, but there's a checklist that we think is very important for, again, any family, but especially those who have members with special needs. And I think it's probably a good place as any to start.
Sure, sure. We focus on areas such as, and there's two different ways to look at it, right? So 6 areas that we like to focus on are things like cash flow. Do you have more money coming in and it's going out? Debt management. You know, we live on debt individually, you know, commercially, and the government, now $31 trillion in debt, right? Mm-hmm. So those are issues. Do you have an emergency fund set aside? A lot of people found out during the pandemic that, you know, they thought they'd be off work maybe a month or two, and then as it dragged on and in a longer period of time where they were out of work, that emergency fund, if they had one, was drying up quickly. So we want to make sure that people understand the importance of having an emergency fund set aside. Again, debt management and credit card debt. We have so much money in debt. By the way, student loan debt, credit card debt. There's so much debt out there. People are just buried in debt. In addition to those 3 areas, we look at obviously proper protection, as Shawn was talking about, making sure that life insurance, which is not just for protection, it is also for maximizing your own wealth and building generational wealth. So insurance is a big deal. Insurance protection is a very big deal. Asset accumulation. Are you earning more money? Is your money earning money? Is your money, I like to have all my dollar bills have a job. I want my money to be earning money. Are we outpacing inflation? You know, with inflation at 8%, 7%, 8%, that's just stated, by the way. It's probably higher than that. If you bought eggs recently, you're thinking like, that's gotta be much more than that.
Yeah.
And then finally, estate preservation. You know, do I have the proper things in place for my family once I pass on, I transition? So things like a trust, wills, all of those things that are, you know, important for estate preservation. So those are the 6 main areas that we focus on. But I like to tell people that, you know, I spent a lot of time in business. I ran a bunch of companies, and I like to look at it from the perspective of if I'm looking at the financial health of a company, mm-hmm. there's the financial statements of the company basically tell you everything you need to know, right? So you've got to think, and they're very similar to what we just covered, but you have 3 basic financial statements in a company. You have a profit and loss statement, which is revenues coming in, expenses going out, right? That's like your cash flow. Do you have more money coming in than going out? So are you profitable? The second one is your balance sheet. Are you building more assets than you have debts? Do you own more than you owe? That's a critical thing. Are the assets that you're acquiring, are they revenue generating? Are there assets? Some people are like, well, I have a bunch of cars. Well, cars as an asset, that's a liability. It depreciates so quickly the minute you drive off the lot. And then the third thing is liquidity, your cash flow statement. You know, that money that you've got left, if you've got money left over every month, is that money going someplace where it's actually, you're maximizing the use of those dollars. So a couple of different ways that we look at it. We help individuals, we help families, we help businesses, and we look at ways that they start to build a financial picture for themselves to not only to get through, the short term and the midterm,
right,
and the long term, but also can you build a generational legacy opportunity. So those are what we do, and those are the areas that we focus on. And then there are so many options. There are so many things that are available to the average American family. The problem is that our banking system and our government seem to favor, they're the two institutions.
In our industry, quite frankly, which is the reason why we do what we do. And because one of the things, if you look at the things that would concern our community more than anything else is, well, how do you protect benefits too? Because
For sure.
you're almost taught or tricked, I should almost say, into settling for less. Because some people, depending on how long they've been on certain assistance programs and things of that sort, you get afraid of thriving, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, So what I started to say was that the government and the banking institutions are the two institutions that are supposed to take care of the average American family. So that's every community. The problem is that those two institutions generally focus on the top 1 to 5%, right? They really favor those. Have you ever known that if you were struggling and you needed a loan, that you were probably pretty low on the list? Yet banks give out money to folks who don't need it. You would talk to somebody who's got a lot of money, they're like, I get offers all the time, I just throw them away because I don't need the money. Those are the people who are getting the money. And that's just sort of a backwards perspective. So that's in general. And what Shawn's referring to is when you add the special needs component to it, again, there's some limitations. If you're getting some support for your family, some sort of benefit from government or some sort of subsistence from the state, there can be a limit to the kind of assets that you can accumulate. If you go beyond that limit, you jeopardize the benefits that your family member may need. And so there are ways that you can enhance that. There are new kinds of accounts. There are new kinds of things that you can put in place that can help you build assets and build some value without jeopardizing your benefits. So we talk about the intersection between the banking industry, the financial industry, and the government, and try to maximize strategies that help families secure their present and their future. And so those are the kinds of things that we discuss. So
yeah, and then the other thing is, what we do is we take a very personalized approach because each person's situation is completely different.
Absolutely.
So I talked before about love language. So the atmosphere and environment that you were raised in has everything to do with how you respond to challenges, to stress, like a diagnosis of special needs of some sort. The relationship that those that raise you had with money also then dictates your relationship with money because it's the example. So you've got the spender, you've got the saver, you've got the investor. All those things, determine that to begin with, and then also play a role in how you kind of funnel through life and deal with everything. And if the diagnosis is severe enough, then you can't plan.
Yeah.
Planning is what leads to striving, right? Or thriving, I should say.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're stuck in survival mode, that doesn't take place. But everything begins with with a single step.
For sure. And I think that, again, so to go back to the first thing we're talking about in the conversation about the den, here's something that's a real situation for a family, and it involves fear. If I haven't saved enough, or I haven't put enough away, or I haven't planned properly, and something happens to me, who takes care of my child? Who makes sure that my loved one has the support that they're going to need to continue to thrive after I pass on? And that is an anxiety, that is again, that's a fear, that's an element of humanity that a lot of us share. And so our job, and you can now see how we function, is to put all that together because we know, we get it. Like, we're there too. We've been there as fathers and of both children with special needs and neurotypical families, and we want all of our children to have the opportunity to thrive and to succeed, and we want to make sure that we've taken all the right steps to make sure that they're taken care of if something were to happen to us. And now, not to give anything away, but we're pushing that age where we say 60 is the new 40. That's what they say, right? So
they say that, yeah.
So the gray's giving it away a little bit, but we're getting that age where like Shawn likes to say these things. There are fewer tomorrows than there were yesterdays, I think, in our lives, right?
Yes,
and so, as we look at that, how many more days, do we have here, and are we making the most out of it? I definitely spend a lot of time. I spend a lot more time communicating with my children, spending time with my kids. And I have two that don't live here anymore. One lives on the other side of the country. The other lives on the other side of the world. And I communicate with them and spend as much time with them as I possibly can. I'm making plans to travel with all of them to Israel this year. But we don't know how much time we've got left.
Right.
And I think if we operate as if we don't have that much time left, our choices become a little bit more clear, and the things that we do and the things that we want to put in place. Luckily, Shawn and I have access to not just a significant platform, but to an entire array of financial products and services that give us options and give us choices and provide the kind of planning that we want to do for our families, and we want to share that with other people. So we're grateful to have the opportunity to be in the conversation. And by the way, in our organization that has about 50,000 licensed professionals like us, Shawn and I are, as Just Two Dads, we're really leading the charge for our entire organization when it comes to serving the special needs community. And in fact, we're trying to change some of the policies that exist with our product providers to make sure that there are special, that there are special products, or there are products that are considering the special needs
features
issues.
that acknowledge,
so that we can protect these, can protect these families and give them some of those.
Yeah,
options.
because we're all the sum total of our experience, and so, there's so much more that's known now when it comes to the diagnosis of various things, but there's a lot that still is not known, and so a lot of companies, for instance, for lack of a better term, a life insurance company, some are more educated than others as to how they go about assessing risk and things of that sort. And so there's a lot that they can learn from people like us.
Yeah. So if it's okay, so like as an example, I will share this with you. And you're gonna be like, this may be. Hopefully, maybe this is putting you to sleep. Maybe this is perfect for you on the East Coast. Maybe this is a great time here. We're putting you to sleep. But we'll give you an example. In the area of life insurance, when we serve a family, we put life insurance. We focus a lot. By the way, life insurance has many benefits. One, obviously, is protection in case you pass away, but the other is an opportunity to build some wealth and to build some legacy, generational wealth. And oftentimes we will insure not just the parents, but also the children, less about the death benefit component to it, but more about cash accumulation and estate, and estate management and building, by the way, a tax-free access to cash. So we have a lot of clients that their children have insurance policies, and the family's shoving a ton of money into the insurance policy, and they're building
which we
cash
do
value.
as well, by the way. Our children are, just
for sure.
We walk the talk, so to speak.
Yeah. But for children who have autism, for example, in some cases, insurance companies will look at that situation and won't give a child who's on the spectrum the same consideration from a health rating perspective as a neurotypical child, which makes no sense, honestly, to us as parents.
And it's based on their ignorance.
Based on the ignorance.
They don't know any better because and really what it is we're trying to make sure that we get them to look at it on a case by case basis. Now they won't insure up to too early age because you don't know what kind of effect one's autism may have upon that person's life expectancy, are they a danger to themselves, to others, things of that sort. But they have kind of a blanket approach, and what we're trying to do is change that from within.
Yeah. We got a comment, somebody asking us if we have a website. So first of all, there's a couple things. First of all, Shawn and I have been working on a Just Two Dads website for 2.5 years. We've
been talking about it for 2.5 years.
Yeah, we haven't actually physically.
But it's been in the process now.
Yeah, we haven't physically worked on it, but we do have a Just Two Dads website coming out. We'll talk about our financial product services. However, that being said, we have a generic one very simply, if you don't mind me giving it out. Mm-hmm. It's very simple, avwms.com. It's Atlas Voyager Wealth Maximization Strategies, avwms.com. There's a place to set a conversation with us, or request an appointment. If you do that, one or both of us will be involved in that conversation. So AVWMS, it stands for Atlas Voyager Wealth Maximization Strategies. Again, it allows us to have this platform to talk about the work that we're doing and some of the other things in the areas of mortgages and student loans and a lot of other issues that people are dealing with, that they don't even realize that there are some alternative paths that they can access. And I'll give you one example. A lot of people don't. So a lot of people talk about the student loan. There's $1.7 trillion. $1.7 trillion collectively in student loans in this country. So just to give you an idea of how much $1.7 trillion is. $1 trillion. So if you spent $1 million a day, do you know how long it would take you to get to $1 trillion? If you spent $1 million a day, you're spending $1 million to get to $1 trillion. Some people would say, well, it's 30 years or 80 years. It's 2,043 years.
Yes.
2,043 years to get to $1 trillion, spending $1 million a day. 2,040 years spending $1 million a day to get to $1 trillion. We have 1.7 trillion in student loan debt in this country. We have 1.3 trillion in credit card debt in this country. Credit card debt, thanks to the feds raising the interest rates, credit cards are now, we're now seeing averages of, it was 16% in the country, now we're seeing averages inch up to into the 20s. A 20% interest rate on a credit card. We've got $1.3 trillion. Student loans compound on a daily basis. So luckily we have companies that we work with. We help people, qualify for forgiveness programs on student loans, get out from underneath the student loan obligation. We have companies that help to help folks manage their debt, to get them out of those kinds of things. Mortgages, very big issue too. A lot of families don't realize that when you hit a certain age, there are some mortgage options that have you. People think about the interest that you pay to the bank. The interest rate is important. A lot of us think about the interest rate being important, but it's more about the interest volume. So if you think about it, when you buy a house for a certain amount of money, a 30-year loan, the amount of interest you pay is more than, usually it's more than double the price of the actual house by the time that you're done.
Right.
Most of the payments of a mortgage payment go towards paying interest. In fact, 18 out of the 30 years in a 30-year fixed mortgage, 18 years, a majority of your payment is going to pay interest. That's a lot of volume. It doesn't matter if your interest rate's 3%. It's a lot of volume to be paying. And so there are alternatives to mortgages and things like that. So some basics around finances that we share with families to give them alternative paths to choose. And those are the kinds of benefits that we like to talk about. So AVWMS, that's just a website that it's really a placeholder for us for the financial services work that we do. Thank you for putting it up on the screen. If you just set an appointment, we'll happily have a conversation with you. We're licensed in most of the 50 states. So,
and it is, just so you know, it's a conversation. So in other words, if you haven't figured out by now, we're very big on trying to at least keep consciousness aware. Okay, what would I want if I were in somebody else's shoes?
Right.
So if you reach out when we have a conversation, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to have a conversation about what are the things that are most important to you. Is there a way that's that will help you? And there isn't a fee for the time that we that we spend.
That's the other thing. We don't charge for our time. By the way, sometimes we spend a lot of time on the phone, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We don't charge for the time because the information is more valuable. We'll be paid for the work that we recommend. We make recommendations. If you choose some of the things that we recommend, the companies we work with pay us a fee, and so that's how we make money. But our fees really are relative, so they're tiny relative to the benefit that you get. So, anyways, but have a conversation, give you some options. I was dealing with a client today who, young, 29 years old, took over his family's business, wanted to set up a family trust, wanted to start buying some real estate. Didn't really understand the process to it, but knew that he wanted to have some planning in place. So we have a trust attorney that we work very closely with, and so we're putting things in place to get him prepared for building at 29 years old, which I love, building a legacy so he can start to develop an estate plan that would take care of his parents and take care of his siblings and then his children as well. So those are the kinds of things that we talk about. We don't get paid for everything that we do, but we get paid for the work that we do. We bring value. Our job is to bring value, which is what we do on Just Two Dads as well. Our goal is to have a conversation that adds to people's lives and adds to the experience, because oftentimes as parents, sometimes we didn't get that ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? It's out of a lack of resources that were available to us. My daughter was diagnosed 25, 26 years ago.
Yeah.
So we didn't have the same kind of access to certain resources back then that we do today. And we as an element of that, we want to make sure that people have access to this kind of information and these kinds of products and services, and access to resources as well. So that's our job, that's our goal, that's what we try to accomplish. And
yeah, that's what being here is all about too. It's just
that's right.
Whether the vehicle is financial services or a men's group in our case, creating a place where men can feel comfortable, or it's something else that that you do. Everything is. Brian mentioned a gentleman by the name of Ed Milet earlier, and he had a guest on there who is the current director of a study that has been in existence since the 1930s. The book is called The Good Life, and they're essentially studying human behavior and happiness. So the people that were the original subjects in that study, many have passed on, and their descendants are now members of the current study. And so they took people from both sides of the track. And one of them happened to be, it took place in Boston, one of them went on to be...
There were 19-year-olds from Harvard University was one group.
Yeah.
And then 19-year-old men, by the way, initially men, and the 19-year-old men from the inner city.
Right.
But those were the two groups that they were sort of comparing. And as they tracked their lives, did their levels of happiness change by privilege, by experience, by a whole bunch of factors.
Right.
And one of them happened to be.
And one of them went on to become president of the United States because it was John F. Kennedy. Yeah. And another one was the editor of, I believe, the Boston Globe or the Herald. I'm not sure, but well-to-do individuals. And in the beginning of this thing, they didn't have DNA to do any kind of testing.
Right.
But what they've done is when they get to their 80s, they ask them things like, "What do you regret the most? What do you value the most?" And most of them said, "I regret that I worked so hard and spent less time with my family."
Yeah.
Or they regretted that their work wasn't so purpose-driven. And if you think about what you get up and do from 9 to 5 each day, how much purpose and satisfaction does it give you? Because success and fulfillment are two completely different things. That's why there's a lot of wealthy people that are not fulfilled and are thus unhealthy. So whether you are in financial services as we happen to be, or have a podcast, or start a men's group, or start a food company, or whatever have you, there's something that is so immeasurable in value about being able to just add value to the lives of others where you go, and that's what everything is about.
And not to give anything away about this study, and a lot has been written. I've seen many articles now about that. So the person who's currently leading the research, which is an ongoing research, 85 years, started in 1938. And so as Shawn said, now we're into the second generation of children of those folks, and measuring happiness. And there were things such as, did more money give you more happiness? Did achievement or accolades bring you more happiness? Did getting married bring you more happiness? Did getting divorced bring you more happiness? Did having children? And what are the things that added? And so they didn't find a lot of statistical significantly different results between the two groups, except in one area, and that was depth of relationships. And so the kinds of so if you had, and it didn't matter quantity, It was quality.
Quality.
So even those that were that identified as introspective or shy, or it wasn't the number. Sometimes introspective, as we know with children with special needs, being in a room full of people doesn't necessarily lead you to any great benefit.
Right.
In fact, it's overstimulation. It wasn't the quantity, it was the quality. And so those folks that they asked, was there anything that you would spend time with? I spend time with my family and spend time with the relationships that are important to me. That's the one measure of all of the things that they've measured over 85 years. That's the one element that they found to be the most correlated to an increase in happiness. And by the way, it didn't matter what the background was. Mm-hmm. More privilege, less privilege, it's the quality of the relationships. Now, obviously, there's some benefits to having access to financial wealth that leads you to, on certain paths that can lead to that. But at the end of the day, it really is about relationships. It's one of the reasons why Shawn and I have been doing this for 2.5 years. We've been in the business together for 8 years. He was in the business prior to me. I joined about 8 years ago. And in our relationship is one of those deep relationships. We talk about everything. We started our podcast. We just talk about everything. Those things, we give each other a hard time. We give each other love and support. We talk straight to each other. The benefit is, we are happier men in our lives. Mm-hmm. Because we know that this kind of a relationship is something that's not only possible, but it's something that we've attained, and that we want to encourage and support others to be able to do the same thing. So
yeah, it was really telling because they asked people, getting back to the quality versus the quantity, to write a list of, I think it was, 5 people that you can count on. They say if you had your car breakdown or something like that at 3 a.m. Yeah. And some people really, really struggled. And I have to tell you that I feel like I am just like one of the wealthiest people on the planet, because I know what I have in my wife. I know what I have in my family, my kids. I know what I have with friends, like yourself. It's everything. Making the world a better place, and then your contribution to the world at large, and then being able to have people that you can connect with. We're having some work done at our house, and the designer came up with a general contractor, and my wife was telling her something, and one thing led to another, and we were talking about just people and connections and stuff. And I don't remember what I said, but the older I get, the more weird I get, or at least maybe the more clear I get. I said, watch, and I can literally show you the same thing here. And I was like, look at the hair on my arms. See, it's literally standing.
Yeah.
That is like, and going back to the whole thing about the introverts, they were saying that, introverts don't need a bunch of friends.
Right.
But they need people they can count on.
For sure.
Everybody we need each other.
For sure.
There are days where I might not feel well, whether it's tired or actual illness, whatever the case might be. And my wife may say 1 or 2 words, and I'm kind of like just based on that interaction. Then I go about my day, and I might have somebody say a little more than a hello. And they literally feel charged from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what everything is about.
For sure.
Yeah.
Before we run out of time here, I wanted to, and Nava said hello too, by the way. So Nava Pasquez-Asner and Matt Asner.
And Matt Asner, yes.
Who run the Ed Asner Family Center.
Yes, we're supposed to be.
We're supposed to be promoting that. So by the way, this is probably some of the stuff that happens. We remember, with like no time on the clock. But we love Nava and Matt and the work that they're doing for our special needs community, not just here in Southern California, but really around the country, and just leaders in the special needs community, and doing really significant things in creating interpersonal relationships. And again, as we're talking about relationships, it's just a perfect segue. Even things like they've led a dating or encouraging friendship kind of a course. So our children who have special needs issues, who may have a socialization issue, have a safe place to go and learn about courtship and learn about relationships and learn about those kinds of things, because it's such a critical component to leading towards happiness. So Nava and Matt, we love you guys so much. In fact, we were guests on their podcast.
Yeah.
In the very beginning.
Very beginning.
And it really inspired us to start our own podcast and share what we do, and we love them. And so it's up on the screen. The Ed Asner.
Donate anything you can to them. This isn't a telethon, and the whole thing isn't here to. I feel like I'm on Jerry Lewis's Labor Day telethon or something like that. Yeah, there you go. But when you talk about a worthy cause, like Brian said, we were on their podcast first, and it was just fantastic. And I remember their son's birthday party. They made that an event.
Yeah.
And I took my son and I filmed him dancing and everything. There was music and stuff. It was almost like being like the equivalent of him being at a club, right? So the lights are flashing and everything. I said it to my mom, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, where did you take him?" And it was just such, it's the epitome of inclusion, and that's what everything is about.
That's what it's all about.
Like when we talking about the financial services piece, we always say, there's more to money than money. So, and what that means is that the things that are the most important, which again is our relationships and our contribution to the world around us, that is everything. So if you can, go to the website, donate any and everything that you can, and every little bit helps.
Yeah, and obviously, and not just today, but look at the programs that they're doing and the work that they're doing. They are really leading the charge. They have obviously family member as well on the spectrum, and so they're doing things that are as parents, but also as just caring people in the community, and they're doing such amazing stuff. They do an annual reading of It's a Wonderful Life with a celebrity like live table read, if you will, but it's a live reading of It's a Wonderful Life. It's amazing. They do a poker night. Fabulous organization, and more importantly, fabulous people, and people who we feel again the relationships are the key to everything, and so support them because they're just amazing. They're amazing people. So,
most definitely.
I know we're getting close to end of our time. Is there anything else that we want to do? Thank you, Nava, by the way.
Yes. I can't think of anything else. And as the very instant, human nature being what it is, the very instant that we're done, I'll go, and I'll think of something. But I want to encourage everyone to continue to support Autism Live as well. We all need each other, and we have so much to give. And is anyone who's looking at this and doesn't have a podcast, doesn't have a platform or anything like that, and doesn't even have the notion that somebody might want to hear your story, tell it. Because for one, our biggest nightmares are somebody else's dreams, right? And whatever we do, when we take the time to tell our story and overcome things, we have no idea who that's going to affect.
Yeah.
There's no way to know.
For sure. We called our podcast Just Two Dads, and we kind of looked at it from a perspective of who are we? Like, we're just two dads. Like, nobody's listening to us. And what happens every day now is somebody will say, "Oh my gosh, I saw your podcast the other day," or "I heard your podcast," or "I caught your latest episode." And we're like, "Really?"
And it might be something that's months after the fact. Yeah. You don't know what kind of value you add to people.
And it's proven to us that that there is. By the way, we continue to have guests almost every single week that want to be on the podcast, that have amazing stories to tell. We're often blown away by the things that come out during our conversations. We do everything organically, so we'll have conversations that we think is going to go one way, and then it goes a completely different direction and is life-changing. So we didn't plan it. We're not professional. We don't edit. We just kind of go as is. If you're thinking about doing it, do it. Your story has so much value to other people, and it'll contribute to other people's lives. And again, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, having relationships that we enjoy and we love.
And then getting back to Susie's question earlier about whether or not we have a website, Brian gave the Atlas Voyager site. There's also our Instagram and the YouTube channel as well, which...
Look for Just Two Dads on social media. We're all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, Just Two Dads, Shawn Francis, Brian Altounian, we're all over and eager and happy to help. Yeah, so thanks for putting up on the screen. That's us. We use our names, so nothing like 5'9.5" guy, non-NBA player, like nothing like that. So you'll find us everywhere. We've enjoyed our time. Please stick around for the other great hours of people on Autism Live and April Autism Awareness Month. Please, make sure that you're sharing with other people. Empathy and love, always.
Most definitely. And remember, questions are so much more powerful than statements. Let's make sure that we do the best we can to remain as childlike as possible and less child ish.
I love it when he says that.